I'm Wake with Shamans Directory, and today I have the distinct pleasure of talking to Chuck Wilson, who's a sacred drum maker, a practitioner of the shamanic arts, and I would say a fantastic storyteller. So I welcome you to our series, Chuck. And you're not, this isn't your first rodeo, but I would like to take advantage of this opportunity to dive into some of your personal story that you wish to share.
Okay.
And we can go from your history to your present offerings to how you see the future. Um, Let me ask this, Chuck. Would you like to start with a drum beat?
Yes, that's certainly more appropriate, and I think the drum that I'll choose, since I have some of my associates here with me and my family. This is my drum Freya. This was the first drum that was created in July of 2018, a couple months after Sandy passed. Now, this is a bear drum. It's black bear. Um, this is the big sister of all the drums, and I will say without reservation, it's probably all of the existence of spirit links and levels of sacred in this drum that it was beyond anything I'd ever considered. And I had never been part of a drum, never built one, anything. So here's Freya. So 7 beats to open the ceremony.
Thank you, Chuck. I feel honored that you're sharing your very first and certainly most sacred drum with us. I get the sense that every drum that you craft has the same energy that you placed into Freya, has the influence of Sandy, who I hope you'll talk about in our time together today. And let me just say, for those who are listening, is that I first was introduced to you, Chuck, through Shamans Directory, an online platform for shamanic practitioners, shamansdirectory.com. In there, you have a profile, and I was looking for people to interview, and all those who I talked to said, you really should talk to Chuck. And I think we're missing an opportunity if we don't start from the place of you being an engineer in your in your
Yeah.
former lifetime and in construction, and that you had sacred experiences as a youth, but you had an awakening, and that's what I want to hear about, as
Okay.
well as whatever else you care to share. But what about this being an engineer?
Well, I've always been a problem solver, and I always see solutions to things. As a kid, I was always building stuff. Um, it was just me. I was curious about how stuff is. I'm a mechanical engineer. Went to University of Kentucky. Got out in '78. Um, I usually think out of the box a lot of times. So some of my solutions, people look at me and they scratch their head and they go, "What the hell are you talking about?" But if you just do this, this, and this, and this, and we get there, and they, oh, well, okay. Um, so yeah, from an engineer standpoint, I'm pragmatic, but I'm extraordinarily big picture, and in my mind has always worked where I'm faced with situation, or I just walking along the street, boom, there'll be a 3D space in my head. Here's a solution. So I was always kind of like that. I finally learned in corporate, in the nuclear business, is the reason sometimes people got pissed off at me in design review meetings because I'd see a solution and I get frustrated that they didn't. And I realized what my problem was I'd see too far fast. And once I realized, and I go back and I'd start leading my thought through there, then people would, it worked out so much better if I just realized I would jump too fast and see things that nobody saw. And, it's kind of, took me a while, a couple decades to figure that one out. So yeah, from an engineer standpoint, when all this happened, the awakening, an aspect of my life is that my mom was ESP, younger sister is, family has been all the way back. So things would happen and I just kind of go, yeah, okay, that's cool. Didn't bother me. I accepted it, and it was part of my natural walk through life. I've had times when spirits would come in and say, do that. And I'd go, somebody just talked to me, so I think I'll listen. Didn't bother me. Did it spook me out? I was part of the Episcopal Church growing up. My mom was Catholic and had to go to school and go to communion and all that. But there came a point in my early teens, it was like, or younger, it's like, this doesn't make sense to me. It's just, there's so much more to all of this. And then, I started seeing my view of it. And I finally said, I'm walking away from you guys because there's so much more in the universe. And I started learning but I just kind of took it as a grain of salt and didn't worry about it much until 2012, I think it was, or 11, I hit my big awakening, emotional awakening. So yeah, that's me and the engineer. It's just kind of like as things happen, I go, yeah, okay, that's kind of cool. What's it mean?
So you've always been a visionary. You've always been someone with a grasp of reality that maybe isn't shared, obviously, by others.
Yeah, that's a kind way of saying it. Isn't shared by others.
Of
Rather
course,
accurate.
uh, of course, Chuck, your big awakening, as I understand it, is related to the passing of your partner. And
No. Well,
okay, correct
it's a
me.
huge part. My original awakening started or happened, I think it was in 2011 or 2012, maybe 13. But I was in a relationship at that time. I've been married a number of times, but I was in this deep relationship. And things were going bad at that point. At the end of it, I was just got dumped to the curb, one last time, and I just cratered. And I had been doing yoga and meditation since 2001, 2000. I could not recover. And everything was tanked. And it took 10, after 10 months, a friend of mine, Rasa, she was saying, Chuck, you got to go see this Dr. Centeno because he's a holistic, but he's also a real psychologist. And you need to go talk. I was sitting on the porch looking out over the ocean. I was at my wit's end. And I thought, go to a psychologist. Okay, that'll be a trip. So all of a sudden, the back of my head, and I've never seen vision back here, there's these little alphabet blocks we used as kids. And the letters started turning over. And it went TRUST, trust. I saw that, I felt it here, and I went, I'll go. So I called, went in the next day. Poor guy. Ran up to the mill, and towards the end of it, a very large manifested gray shape, humanoid, big thing. And he had his arms down around me, and Centeno was just looking at this going, I didn't see it, but he did. And the shape, we call him Mr. Gray. He was reaching down around me. And at that same point, up coming through my feet was this huge ball of white light. And it came up and exploded through me. And I felt the words, I knew what it was. It was hope, and it was love. And this exploded through me at the same time Centeno saw his arms down around me, holding me. And he heard him say, I have you. You're not going further. You're coming back. And that was the awakening, this explosion. I never experienced anything like that, let alone the depression, fragmentation that I was going through. And then this, you know, it's kind of like, what the heck just happened? And he didn't tell me this, that he saw it till like 4 months into session. He finally said, I got to go back to the first day. Because as we worked, I went there every week. And poor Dr. Centeno, he'd get hands on his head, and he's a free rider, and he was just kind of looking around all the time. But it was kind of like Mr. Gray comes to class, old class on Chuck every week. Here's what we're going to talk to about, you know, every week. And that was my awakening. I went through this long period of, I think I saw him like 18 months um, of trying to learn what was going on, because as I was recovering from that, I touched somebody and they'd, or something would happen and I'd see, and I had no idea what was going on. And that was the point of my awakening. So that's kind of a big one.
That's a super big one. And how did you settle that with your engineer's brain? I hear from you that you worked on it for quite a while, and you've been a
Yeah.
very dedicated student of understanding your own experience.
Yeah. It everything, it, to me, has always come across as natural. It isn't something that, you know, an event happens, poosh, a big ball of white comes up through my, you know, my body, explodes out the top, and my head goes back like this, like the lady in the Fifth Element, you know, when she destroys the planetoids, you know, it's like boom. Um, there was just this continual level of acceptance. I was radically curious and just, what just happened? And I think about it, and I, you know, think about it a little bit more, and I'd read lots of books, but nothing was turning me off. I wasn't seeing anything that was red flags or, gosh, Chuck, you don't know what you're talking about, you know, blah, 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 you know, go have another drink. Um, it just had this aura of reality, of truth, of natural, of being part of what I was supposed to do, I think. I put, I'd be told, here, touch this person's neck, boom, poof, they drop off. They go off in the form and the formless. If you know what the form and the formless is, that's serious in the Buddha world. Boom, they go off there. And I don't know what's going to happen. I just touch them. Boom, they come back, they tell me the story, and I go, huh, that was pretty cool. I'm glad something happened, because again, a lot of these things, I have no idea what's going to happen. I just kind of listen, and it's modified now radically from a growth expansion point of view. I do see a lot. I journey with a lot of people. With this thing in my head right now, there's doors that have been opening up that the last couple of weeks have been, let's just say, multi-universal vision to what existence is. I think it's an amazing point in my path. So it's just been all fun. I call
Well,
it fun because it is. You get such a reward about working with people like this. It's just like cool.
Chuck, people may see this video at any time in the future that they choose to access shamansdirectory.com, look up your profile, and click on the link. However, I do know that this is the time right now when something is going on in your head that's that you're investigating. Would you like to say something about that?
Yeah, I'm open with everything. A couple weeks ago, about 2 weeks ago, I was in bed it was 2 weeks ago Thursday. 1 o'clock, roll over in bed, boom, the room goes vertigo, spinning around. I'm a real healthy guy. I don't take anything. So I'm laying there thinking, you know, here down is fine. Got something up in here. So what they found, I went to the doctor the next day. There's about a golf ball sized tumor behind my left eye here. It's a benign melanoma, whatever they call it. But it's the type that forms in the dura that's around your brain, but it grows inward slowly, slowly, slowly. So this is a really slow one, but it's been pushing on my brain. Um, I knew it had to be that or a stroke or something stupid like that. So when they said, "Oh God, you got a brain tumor," I went, "Yeah, okay." I kind of figured it was one, door number A, door number B. So they're going to saw the neurosurgeon, and he said, it should come out fine. Um, Not so worried about it. So I'm not. It's kind of. I'll break in. I'll add to this part of the story in that one of the wonderful parts of my path is being able to speak about any time I want to, especially in extreme detail with my spirit family. Um, there's some shaman people that I know locally. And I call staff meeting. You know, I've related this to people, and they think, this is a weird way to talk to spirits. Well, I make my list as I normally do. I need to talk to my spirits because I got questions. Call up Kathy. Kathy, let's have a staff meeting. So we sit down, either phone. This time she came over a couple days ago. We're kind of there's the podium is here and the universe is around, and the bleachers are usually always full, and folks come down and they give input, and I always listen first. What do I need to know? And I go through my questions. They all know the questions anyway. So being blessed with that ability to get some extraordinary detail on a conversational level with my folks, I the level of blessing on that I'm so thankful for, because it gives me such insight on my path. And I don't bug them every day. Should I have peanut butter and jelly? Should I have cheese and crackers? It's like when I'm serious, they know and they show up. So over the last 2 weeks, I've had a lot of input. And one, this is something that needed to come out, but it was also tied to some different past life issues and also some issues in early trauma in my life physically. Actually, Sandy, who's my late partner, she's in charge of the OR. She picked the docs. She always does all these things anyway because we're extraordinarily integrated souls. And she already told me, we're going to be up doing some astral travel while you're under anyway. I got the doc's hands. I got everybody else. Don't worry. And I saw this vision. She's got 2 tickets. She says, we're going on a tour, buddy. So just don't worry about it. This isn't your time. There's many things to do. The drums are vital to us. This is actually going to be a period of time in your life where you are now is just another exponential growth in the clarity of perhaps an application of the gifts you have in this particular life. I learned about other past lives here last 2 weeks where spirits had come forward and said, I knew you in South America. I knew you, this is what we did back in 1792. This is what you did here. This was your name. And it's an interesting pattern because it seems, a lot of these different locations, I was a teacher, I was a shaman. A point in Australia, through circumstances, it seems that I brought instead of one-to-one shaman apprentice, I brought a shaman with many apprentices into place. And I actually brought women into the shamanism circles versus just being herb healers. That was one. Entity came out, South America. Knew me back then. It was kind of the same pattern. I asked him what my name was, and of course, came out, and I said, could you translate in English, please? But it was Shining Sun of the Trees. It relates to the drums and the trees and everything here, and so I've learned that. But then I saw there's a pattern to it. The drums that Sandy brought out that she told me I needed to make, that's all part of helping other people on their paths in ways I found last 2 weeks I've done before in different aspects. And so that was a real light bulb coming on going, wow, another piece of the puzzle comes together. Makes sense. So, so I'm not worried about this. They said it's not my time yet. They got more stuff for me to do and relax, have a good time.
Well, Chuck, one of the things that I've heard you say in the past is that vulnerability is our greatest strength.
Yes.
And I think you're a terrific example of that. I could just use the our conversation today. We made arrangements a couple weeks ago. You found the diagnosis. I wrote back and said, "Well, let's put this on the back burner. You have plenty of other things to do." And you said, "No, we're going to do this."
Why not?
So you're charging ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's immaterial one way. A lot of us, I guess I will say about the people in the spiritual community, um, all of us are so blessed, especially those with such concrete experiences when you have them, of walking to the other side, working with your spirits and everything. You know, you've done this so many frickin' times all over the place. If your life path ends here, it's just one of, I don't know, a billion, whatever the number is in whichever universe it's okay. And I I try to communicate so much with people when I'm working with them. My experience with Sandy passing, how she works with me all the time, how's and everything like this. And I've seen a lot of times people get great comfort because they're facing some issues, some trauma, some hospice issues with their family, or their own illnesses. It's been a powerful addition to my path to tell people this. There's faith. That's great. Keep your faith, but dude, when they walk in and you're looking at them, they go, "I am part of you. You're part of me." And that level of believability is just so wonderful to have all the time. When you're saying that they walk with you, you walk with them. The truism is just perfect.
Chuck, I'd like to hear a little bit more about the transition from your awakening to finding drums, because you have found this to be one of your expressions of service.
Yep.
And you could tell us about your drums. And what has the journey been like for you?
Okay.
How did you get from that awakening to drums?
Well, I met Sandy in 212, hung out for a while, and go a little a different path, and we came back together. Sandy is she turned out to be my life partner, and she was very strong. She was a carpenter. She had biceps that would, guys at the gym would be jealous of. And she and I used to go up in the mountains, gold mine all the time up in the Washington State. Um, Rock lover, geologist, just a wonderful person, like half crazy like I was. And so, that's pretty good. And, but she was shaman and her gifts were growing. And I didn't tell you this one story, but the first time I really heard a concrete thing that you're a shaman sort of a thing, because some people, I was reading about it, I said, "No, that's not me. I don't know what this is." But we were in a hot tub in my house and we're looking out over the water, and I just put my hands on her shoulder one time, just hands on her shoulder. She started screaming. She's screaming at the top of her lungs. "Stop, stop, it's too much, it's too much, too much." And I go like this, "What the heck?" She said it felt like 600 amperage. I was electrocuting her, just pow. And she, being a construction, she just went berserk, and I went, "Whoa." Freaked us both out. And about a week later, she came back and said, "I did a little work on this. There was words in my head while you were electrocuting me, and it said shaman hands, shaman hands, shaman hands." So I looked it up. "You're a shaman." And I just looked at her and went, "What does that mean?" I had no idea. So, but she had gifts and she could see, and we were working together so much. And then she had kind of a first bout of cancer come through, breast cancer. And we went through that. And there was a time I was working on her on doing Reiki stuff because I'd been told to go understand Reiki. So I went to class. But there's one time I put symbols. I didn't tell her what I was doing, but I put symbols underneath her. And then as I raised the symbols up through her, her back arched up and she just let out this primal scream as this thing came out of her. Shocked us both. I had no idea, So it was all part of the learning experience for both of us. But then a couple years after that, in summer 2017, a second round of cancer came through. It snuck in undetected, and she had tumors up her spine, and we were trying to hike out of a mountain one time, and it was just disaster. But she just drug on. So there's 8 months of me taking care of her 24/7. And this is a lady that, if you looked at the MRI, her T10 spine was like that, okay? Totally disintegrated, cervical, everything like that. And she was still, at the end, if she wanted to move a box in the house, she'd put a strap on the box and drag it across the floor where she wanted it. And that was her. So when she passed on my birthday, which is this next Tuesday on the 18th. She since told me it's our 2 birthdays. It's her birthday going back and my birthday coming in this time. So anyway, she passed, and it was very traumatic. Even though we both knew what was going on, we both knew our past. But you lose somebody, as we talked before, is what I learned as a hospice and caregiver is you're in a position to give stability to a person you love. You have a dam that's formed. Mine was Hoover Dam. And all your emotions, everything goes behind the dam because you have to be stable. When they leave, it breaks. And it's trauma. And it's trauma. It's not fun. No matter what, where she is, and she was standing behind us the whole time. So I went through that period of time for a couple months. And then in May came up, I thought, I need to go to Burning Man, because we were going to go to Burning Man. And we never did, but there's a place in Burning Man called the Shaman Dome. And I had wanted to go there just to learn from people, because I'd read about them. So I sent them an email, a couple of emails. And they responded, and it was kind of like, you don't know me, I don't know you. And one time they emails back and forth. They had told me that they'd downsized, I think it was 125 or something people, down to 34. And what really is my story? So I told them the story. And 20 minutes later, I get an email saying, you're in. Surprised the boogers out of me. I was just, you're kidding me. And I knew right away that Sandy had something to do with it. And she did. So then after that, they said an announcement, you got to have a drum. And I went, okay. So I started looking online. You can see them on Amazon. You can buy them like that. I knew I had to make one. I had to make a drum. There's a lot of sacredness to what I learned at that point about drumming and the path. And I found 2 shamans over on Whidbey Island, Sharon and Charlie Henderson. Went over there. And it was funny in the conversation setting up to it. I talked to Sharon, and she said, okay, what's your power animal? What's this? I don't know. I haven't seen them yet. Well, they're telling me you get a bear drum. I go, oh, okay, bear. Why not an elk? Why not a deer? Why not this? Does everybody get a bear drum right off the front? That's me asking all my questions. One conversation, she goes, Chuck, I got to tell you something. Spirits are getting pissed off at me. And they're telling me in no less than strong terms, shut up. You're getting a bear drum. That's it. Be quiet. Okay. So we go over. So I get Freya. So we made the actual creation of the drum was a phenomenal event, not only for the people there, but people have heard the story, the people that were hold the drum. As we started making the drum, Charlie, he was a couple years younger than me, and he stopped me. He said, look, as a kid, he'd always seen spirits in gray. He'd help them, he'd talk to them as he grew up and everything like that. He said, Sandy is right there, and she's in full technicolor. He had never seen a spirit in full technicolor. She was part of the conversation as a normal person talking for 3 to 4 hours as that drum was made. She would tell me through Charlie, this is what we're putting in. This is what I'm here. Yggdrasil is part of this. These people are part of this. This is your job. And by the way, don't let anything stand in your way in life of getting to Burning Man. You have to go there. If you don't, I'm going to kick your ass. verbiage. You know? So this event of making the drum was, nobody had ever seen this before. It was like the amount of I always feel it, you know, the amount of energy, of love, of passion. I mean, I couldn't speak. I was crying most of the time. So it was amazing. So that's how Freya the drum came, and all the instructions and everything like this. I went to Burning Man. I was told, protect that with your life. So I did. Went to Burning Man, and the first week, I think I sat with 50 or 60 people as part of this team. And it was the first time for me to do that. And I was paired up with some people, you know, a lady the first time, and then I started working on my own. But it was this community of some amazing healers. At the end of the when we left, I was talking to this one kid, young lady, and she looked at me. She said, "Thank you for grounding me all week." You know, I went, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "You grounded the entire camp. It was like we were walking through this layer of grounded earth, and it all came from you." And that was news to me. So I learned so much, and everything was just new. And the people I'd work with, I kind of developed this technique of you know, I hold my drum. I'm a real low key type guy. I'm not a salesman. But what I do when I work with drums is say, "Here, hold this drum. Here, hold it over your heart. Go like that. Close your eyes. Go off in quiet land." You know, that's how I work with my drums. And I saw so many times people would just, boom, they'd cry. Their eyes would come open. Some things that they'd been working with all their life had just, solutions come to them. But it's the spirits that come in, and they just have a chit chat. And I learned early in the drum work is that it's permission. When you give somebody a sacred drum, this is a sacred drum. There's a lot of spirits involved with this. Will you hold it? When you say yes, as in all things spiritual, if you ask for permission, or you give permission, they'll talk. Otherwise, they'll just kind of sit there saying, "We'd like to help you, but you never asked us." That's what these little critters are. They are their own kind of level of gateway, because, you know, I've seen it so many times, so many stories, but that's how I work with the drums. And that's what I learned at Burning Man. So it went on, and I went to shamanic Reiki classes with Jonathan Hammond and Stacy. I got them reversed, but it was just a continual process of learning. And one of the
Chuck,
ladies, go ahead.
I'd like to emphasize the part that you're showing us now, the deep relationship you have with your drum, the way that you hold it with such a calm
Reverence. It's reverence.
reverence. And I do believe you when you say you ask people if they would like to hold a drum, and
Yeah.
you let their experience take form. And the other part I'd like to ask you about is it feels like you're very hands-on with your drum. Maybe you do use a stick or a beater, but I haven't experienced that.
No.
It feels like you're hands-on with your hands, with your fingers. Could you tell us a little about that relationship?
That's it's a well-framed question. I hadn't heard that one quite before. Yeah, I've been around people at drums when they work drums. They wail the crap out of it. Hurts my ears. Hurts my energy feeling. I'm thinking, don't beat your drum. But for me, because of how the drums came to me, how this one was formed, and then later on I was told the reason for the other drums I make is so that Sandy can put everything that she put in here into all these other generations of drums. My understanding of the depth of magnitude of what all is involved with this you know, it's rather significant. It's different. Um, Everything I learned from drums early on when I started looking at it, you know, there's ceremonial drums people keep in a closet. They come out gathering, so they take to powwow. Sometimes the sun dancers, you know, they'll have a drum and they'll be working on it, and I stories from guys who've been there, and they'll just toss them in the dirt, and I go, don't do that to your drum. What are you doing? You know, don't ever take one of my drums because you're not throwing it in the dirt. You know, they'll be mad at you. Um, so that there's the shamanistic part of using drums too is a very important one. It's been for millennia of helping people get into journey path, helping the shamans get into journey path, walk over back, look for things. It's a very important tool. What I found with my experiences now is there's a different classification of drum, or a different utilization of drums when these ones specifically, and I know other drums act similar to that, but nobody's ever held one of these drums that has come out of my work and said anything except eyes poke. You know, most of the time they go, what in the world is this? And I've had tribal people come up and looked at some of the drums and instantaneously say, that is a different class of drums that honors all the tribes. It honors everything. It brings the integration of all of this together. I've had that comment proffered to me at the start of a conversation where I just said hi. So there's a lot of people that see, feel, and understand what these little critters are. So I do take great reverence, and I do play, just when I play a drum, it's, I'd say 95% of the times with my fingers. I feel the rhythm that needs to be said when I'm working on somebody. And other drummers know this, and shamanic people, is you're drumming over somebody, you know, you got a rhythm going, and it goes off, the rhythm goes off, that's a spot you got to work on. I feel it so much better with my hands, my fingers, when I'm doing that. The volume, to me, I can get loud if I need to. I can get very soft. And my work a lot of times deals with close in with somebody on a table or just sitting in a chair, but it's a very soft rhythm that I put that into it. So yeah, that's kind of a difference the way that I do things.
I like that. And to me, Chuck, it talks or speaks to your relationship with the world of spirit, your relationship with Sandy, your relationship with your medicine, which is the drums. It doesn't need to be beaten into someone. It's a
No,
delicate connection.
no, and it spans from the point of just letting them have it and shutting up. And I just, most of the time, I'll give it to them and I won't say anything. And as I watch them, you can see that people drop into REM, their eyes will drop sometimes, or their tears. I feel a lot. A lot of times, as whatever issue's coming up, I'll feel this big emotional surge, and or sometimes I'll get pulled into journey space with them, and I'll kind of peeking around the corner to see what's going on, you know. um, yeah, it's my understanding of my experiences so far in learning this sacred space, learning how to optimally be the pastor, work with the spirits and assisting them doing what they need to do. It's been phenomenal. I mean, I've read so many books begin, but I mean, you start your path reading and you start your path listening. As you gain your experiences, and then go back and recalibrate the experience, what really happened or not. And then me, you know, I'll call a staff meeting. Could you guys tell me what just happened here? You know, so, you know, I love it. I know a lot of people talk to their spirit guides in depth, and all of us who can routinely, we're all blessed. I mean, it's such a wonderful thing. I mean, it just takes the uncertainty, oh gosh, am I doing things right or not? Go ask them, and they go, don't do it that way, do it this way, or you know, it's great.
Is drumming a part of your staff meeting, or does it happen in a different way?
Happens in a different way. I mean, when I talk to this to my folks on the staff meeting, I've got a lot of questions. What am I going to do here? What do I have to do here? What's happening with this person or something? I was over in Indianapolis a couple months ago. This guy found me. He was out in his journey space and sitting in a ring with his people back in December. And he heard the sound and the energies of multi-wood drums. And he knew he had to go find them. So he found me on the net, the shamans, and he's only a couple hours from here. So we traded emails back and forth, and he's extremely gifted. He's at a point in his life where all his training and everything, he's to the doors is open, there's a clear field in front of him, and he's figuring out what his path is going to be now. He's a great healer. So back and forth, I'm learning his path in his life, and I'm thinking, I'm supposed to help this guy. Wow, he's advanced. So, okay, Kathy, I need a staff meeting. So I'm sitting down with my folks saying, this guy's like, and they go, we know, don't worry about it. And I said, what's your words of wisdom? What am I supposed to do? And they said, we have no words of wisdom for you anymore, Chuck. Go. You're fine. You know what you need to know in all these situations. Just go and participate. You know us. And it just took this weight off my shoulder because I was really kind of, this guy's like serious stuff. And here's me and my drums. And, what am I going to do? But they said, Chuck, we have no wisdom. You're already there. Don't worry about it. So I went, spent 4 or 5 hours with him. He's actually sent some of his healing into the tumor. And my other shaman friends saw it, what it's been doing, what his work has been done inside my head. So you just learn as you go. But yeah, the drums are, it's a simple way that I work with them most of the times. A lot of times, though, I'll drum them over people. I may have Freya sitting on somebody's heart, and I'll use one of my other drums. I'll be, working different areas on them like this. And so, yeah, that's kind of the MO of how I work.
The name of your drum making is Wakan Drums. How did that emerge?
That was as the story has emerged, more and more of the spirit people come forward that I become aware of that Sandy has pulled together. And I will unequivocally say the drum program came from Sandy. And I know that we were all sitting around at some cosmic place planning out this whole event, but she is the driver. She is the drum mother. She is in every drum. She works with so many people that come back from journey. There was this lady, and this is what she did, and here's a message for you. Oh, you met Sandy. She's pretty funny, isn't she? Yeah, she's a riot. So I get a lot of those, but so, gosh, I kind of forgot your question. Sorry.
The Wakan, I'll say it.
Wakan, okay, got it. So
how did that emerge? How did you find that?
Thank you. So it was after I got back from Burning Man in November. I got a call from Andrea, and Andrea is this wonderful part Yaqui lady that I met just after I made Freya. And I went to her before I went to Burning, just after I made Freya. Could you please tell me, she's a drum maker, a birther, an amazing practitioner. And I said, please tell me, teach me. And so we sat, and the first time I met her, she had a table with roses and flowers, and that's where we placed Freya. And in the conversation, so she had been taught, one of her teachers was a adopted Sioux lady in Seattle. So I went, but in late November, she called me up and said, Chuck, Sandy just dropped in. She had a little conversation with me. She had done that before, so it was something Andrea was used to, because Sandy does that. But she says, Sandy's worried about you. She asked me to put together a ceremony to help you come together with what's happened. And she went to talk to her teacher, her mentor, and they came up with this. He needs one of the Sioux ceremonies, the keeping of the soul ceremonies, one of the 7 that great white buffalo cow lady gave to the Sioux. And Andrea had given it 3 times before. So she told me that. She said, read this book and put the details together. I had a lot of questions for her, And then she said, well, hold it. So we held it on January 13th, 2019 at my house. My son was there, a couple of people I knew. Andrea came over with her assistant, her drummer assistant lady, and we held the ceremony. It was kind of funny because as she comes up to the driveway, spirits stop her and say, you're not ready yet. We want more stuff done. Go down to the river, get some water, because there's these other ceremonies we want you to do on Chuck at the same time. So, so she held the keeping of the soul ceremony. And that ceremony, you're taking care of the soul of a person that's passed, your family you love, for a year, and it's an in-depth ceremony. It's something you accept the responsibility for. And it's serious. And we did that. And it was a wonderful experience.
What are you sensing now?
Her, Buffalo. There's so many spirits in the room with me now that it's just, but the essence of what I'm feeling is Sandy hugging on my heart.
Yeah.
So anyway, that happened, and held the ceremony. And a couple months into this, I get this idea that, I'm looking at this drum. It's a cedar drum, and it's got segments. And I'm thinking, how can I make this better? It's the engineer part. Well, the idea is coming from the outside, I find out. And then I get the idea, I need to make this with different woods, sacred woods. Wow, this would kind of like honor all the trees and Freya and the tree of life, because it is in this. So I started thinking, and how am I going to do this? And I had never made these drums before, let alone drums that are like this, that are multiple woods. And there's so much into them. I ended up putting the medicine wheel in every drum. That represents so many things. We'll go into that in a minute. But so I had to figure it out. And it was in May, I think I had my first prototypes. And I go to some of the psychic shows and I give them some of my buddies, here, hold this. Poof. I'm watching people, seasoned psychics, they drop out in the cosmos or wherever it is, and they just come back, or they're flying along with the eagle, across plains and through mountains, and they're just, dragons are coming in, and they're saying, what have you done? So they worked. So I thought I needed to go to Powwow. And I talked to Andrea and I said, I'm trying to get a name for this, but these are sacred, and that's Wakan. I don't know whether it's my choice to use that word because it's a Sioux word. And I didn't want to appropriate, I didn't want to just come across as saying, this is a sacred drum, because I looked up sacred drum, sacred this, sacred that, sacred that. And I thought, I'm doing a Wakan ceremony. So I asked her, I said, here's my dilemma. Andrea, what's your thoughts? Can I use this word? Can I call these Wakan drums? And she thought about it. She's a very stoic, wise woman. And she said, Chuck, what was the ceremony that you did? I said, this. Go back and read the instructions, okay? I did. She says, Chuck, you're Wakan for the rest of your life. What you make is Wakan. Your drums are Wakan. It's all truth. It's okay for you to refer to them as Wakan drums. And it was a relief to me because I needed permission. I wasn't going to just step out and, I got this, I got that. It's like, I'd like some permission and validation. It's okay. So that's how I named the drums Wakan drums.
How would you describe even more fully the term Wakan and what that experience is, both for you and with the drums themselves?
Wakan is holy. It's walking in purpose. It's walking in the circle. It's walking with creation. It's walking with creation, I think is a good word. It's kind of a guide, what you try to do every day, be a good person. It's walking with spirit. It's helping other people walk with spirit. In my view, it's helping people find their red road, their spiritual path. It's that interaction that you get into because you've been kind of initiated. That's what you're accepting the responsibility of doing, is helping people along aspects of their path that are not your normal society. This goes, to me, it goes well beyond anything religious, because you're not dealing with dogma at this point at all. You're dealing with people that we are anyway, from who we really are. So that's Wakan. I mean, you try to integrate that in your life as being a good person, helping people as best you can. There's many layers to it, but yeah, that's my definition of how I feel about it.
I know that you make primarily two types of drums, and that your primary drum, at least in the last few years, has been honoring the tree people. And I really, I'd like to explore that. Um, and then I'd like to get into the symbols that you put on your
Yeah,
bent wood drums, because I think that's equally exciting in
it
its
is.
own way. So,
Yeah.
would you like to begin with the tree people?
Yeah. The way that the tree people concept came in is because of Yggdrasil, the tree of life, through the Nordic. Um, One of the entities that I met at the very beginning is Lady Freya. Her and Sandy are big buddies. Sandy's buddies with everybody. I will say that without question. She's buddies with everybody. But Lady Freya was part of it. Yggdrasil is part of it. I've seen Yggdrasil several times now. So the aspect of the sacred woods and the sacred trees and the tall people, I was early in my path trying to figure out what kind of the purpose of the drums are. And what I read some very fascinating books. One of them is Sacred Trees by Nathan. I always forget his name, but fascinating book, thick one. And I go through it, all the different sacred trees, because every one of those trees represented magic. It represented tribal connection. It represented cultural connection. It represented ceremony. It represented many of these things that I was awakening to and understanding. So I thought it was very important to try and pull as much as I could from the sacred trees of the tall people. That's what many indigenous cultures call them, the tall people, into the drums as a representative of all this around us. So I found many, and there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. And I finally, whittled it down to maybe 20, 24 woods I was going to work with. And I finally, me being me, I said, guys, we got to have an understanding here. You represent everybody. I can't put 1,000 woods in these things, and I'm struggling trying to figure out even to build it. And they said, okay, that's fine. This is good. So, so they do. They represent everything. And what, for example, let's start out on the medicine. As I think it was the second or third round before I went to my first powwow, I realized, because of me being in the ceremony, keeping the soul in the tide of the Sioux, I needed to put in every drum a medicine wheel. But the medicine wheel isn't specifically for a tribe. The colors I used, orientation I used, the colors on this one, I think the black and the red are flipped a little bit from what the traditional Sioux is, but it's my interpretation. So what I ended up doing, I used the medicine wheel as the connection point to many tribes and cultures around the world through the sacred trees, as the primary integration point. If we start at the north, this is always one where I start once I find it. Yeah, here it is.
Chuck, when you're talking about the north, as you begin to explain the woods of the medicine wheel, I believe you said that the north is something to the extent of your direction or
Yeah,
your guide. Could you say more about that?
it is. The north to me is the Nordic. It's yeah, that's an interesting point, because to me it's oh yeah, the story, the north. as I was studying early on, the Andean cultures, the hummingbird is the north, the condor is the west, the eagle, or the condor is the east, the jaguar is the west, serpent's the south. Well, one time I was thinking about all this, and I was kind of in journey space, thinking about the hummingbird in the north, and I went on journey, and there was this big lodge house, in deep in the woods, and that, to me, it was a lodge in the north. And I went to the door, skins, and there's people on the side, and I kind of peeking in, and I went in, and I said, I'll just go sit in the back, watch, because it's huge inside, spirits and everything. And I got told right away, no, you're not sitting back there. That's your chair right there. It's always been your chair. Go sit down. And that was a phenomenal moment for me. I mean, it was, so that's the Lodge of the North to me. That has the tall people. It has all my ancestors. It has connections to many places. It has the shamans. It has the trees. It has connections, the fae folk. To me, that's my nexus of where I go. And I bring a lot of people there to walk in, go sit by this fire that's always burning, ask to, talk to people. They're waiting for you. And so I've had a lot of interactions where I take people to the north. So to me, that's my importance for the north, the hummingbird, all the relations, all my earth relations are there. So that's where that goes. To start with the woods, in the north, one of the important woods is holly. And holly, I found in the books, was Odin's spear shaft. So the Asgardians are, one of the realms. And so that honors them. Then the next one is red Nara. Red Nara is a wood out of Southeast Asia that the Buddhists use as ornamental woods on their altars. Tibetan Buddha, a lot of them. And I've felt the Buddha energy. He actually came at one of my drum keepers. The night before I brought it to her, Buddha popped in, and she was very gifted in being able to see and speak with spirits. Surprised the crap out of her. And it's like, here's Mr. Buddha. You're getting a sacred object tomorrow, your drum. I'm here to teach you and school you on what your responsibilities are. And that went on with her for quite a while. So red Nara to me is my tie back to the Buddhist. Another important wood that's in all four corners is the Siberian larch. I found Siberian larch is a wood that was used by the shamans in the Tungus tribe. The Tungus tribe is the one where, we all kind of accept that's where the shaman derivations came from. When I found that out, it was like, yes. And I found a guy down in LA, a Russian who was, imports it because it's commercial wood, Siberian larch. When I told him, yes, I'd pay the freight for the free samples, and when I sent the email, I got popped into gray space. And I'm sitting on my computer. I'm just there. I'm in gray space, vision space. And I see this line of people that go out as far as I can see. And they're all in winter clothes. They have their hoods back, and they're Siberian. And they're all smiling as far as I can see. And I have this wave of happy and of just happy. And I'm sitting there crying. I can't speak. I can hardly breathe. And I'm feeling this wave of energy coming back saying, yeah, you chose well, son. So
it feels to me, Chuck, like you chose well, emphasizing the tall people and
yes.
and the tall people on their own uh, in different parts of the world, in addition to their connection to different tribes
Yep.
and lineages and experiences. I think this is quite a unique way of constructing uh, your drums. Isn't it unusual in the field?
I have yet to run across the only person that I've run across that uses multi-wood drums like this is a guy that I met in Seattle. Really nice guy. He does Reiki work, shaman Reiki drums, I think, or something. He'll take a salad bowl, cut the bottom off, and make a drum out of it. And I saw it one time, and I went, But in all the people I've met, the drum makers, the tribal people, the people that have been in the business for years, like some of the Four Winds people, um, they see my drums and they go, "We have never seen anything like this, Chuck, ever." The guy that did my first Inepi that I sat with, Dirk, um, been doing it for years. He's part Blackfoot, and he's traveled the world. When I sat with him and he saw the drums, he said, "Chuck, you're the only one of the 500 that I know that makes drums like this or even feel like this. You are the one." And nobody has this whole concept of the integration, because the tribes, every tribe has its own drum. They have their own way to ceremony. They have the way that they build it. And it's very parochial. It's their drums. But my view, which is given to me by little Miss Sandy, is, these are the integration drums. These are everybody. You're pulling everybody together, all their medicine, all their energies. This is what I want these to be. Now figure out how to make it, Chuck, and hurry up about it. So, yeah.
I love that point of view, Chuck, where you talk about these to be integration drums, global drums. That's truly the core essence of Shaman's Directory itself, holding the one sacred fire, and then inviting practitioners and wisdom people from all over the planet to join. And you've crafted a physical object that symbolizes that and has a life of its own. I can't
Oh, it
help but
does.
ask
They
about,
do.
they do have a life of I
Oh,
can't
yeah.
help to ask about that, like the life of each drum, the personality. How do you bring a drum to life, or how do you recognize the life within the drums you craft?
I learned, well, because of my casual nature, call it that. Um, I learned a lot about ceremony when I read the book by Sandra on ceremony. And I reached a point of realization that, yes, you can walk with spirits, you can work with them all the time, but there are points where ceremony is extraordinarily important. It's like a formal dinner. It's a formal integration of us as human life forms, extensions to what we really are. But that's very important. So when I make the drums, I'm working, but I reach a point where I'm actually gluing the layers up. And to me, that is my formation ceremony. So I go down my long list of RSVPs of everybody, please come into the rooms. Sandy is the mistress of ceremony. She makes sure all the people or spirits are supposed to be here. But part of that ceremony is to ask that all of the spirit guides of any and all of the drum holders that will hold this drum for as long as this drum is on the face of this earth, please be present and know that this drum is here for your person. And I also ask that the spirit guides, for anybody who's going to hear the drums, hold the drums, use the drums, please be present for those people at some point in the future when they do interact with this drum. That is kind of the core of my ceremony.
Think of how much you're calling in with that.
Yeah, yeah. I can tell you, a lot of times I can't speak. I'll get part of the way through and it is so filled up. I can't speak. I have tears. I have to take a break because my heart is so being filled with their presence and their happiness and their intent and love. It just pours. And I sit there and I take a breath and I come up with something else to say and I go through my ceremony and I say, okay, it's time to get to work. Yeah, there's been times I've not been in my shop. I've just been sanding on wood, working on stuff. And I go back to my path and I say, I'm so grateful for this. This is, I think about the various entities that are part of it and purpose, and they come in and I just freeze up and I go, whoa, I just have a happy moment. And it's just, I don't know what to say except it's just been so phenomenal. I'm so incredibly grateful for being gifted or charged to do this work.
it must be quite the experience for the drum itself to be
Oh yeah,
crafted in this way with your loving hands and then be sent out in the world. What's
my
that like
kids.
for the drums?
Yeah, they're my kids. You know, I go to shows sometimes or I sell them. I feel kind of sorry because it's like sending them off to college, and it's like, darn, I don't want you to go. Um, yeah, it's been interesting though because everyone has different personality. They're huge. Um, People come to the show that are sensitive. I'll say, here, hold this one, hold this one, hold this one. I had a lady come in and I gave her this one drum that's going to go to a shaman lady eventually. They held the drum and they got this look on their face and they went, they put it right back. And I said, what wrong? They said, it told me, put me down. I'm not yours. And, you know, it's like, don't touch me.
Does a
And
drum ever say, "Hey, I'm staying with Chuck. You know, he's the master drum maker.
yeah,
I want to stay with you."
I have I have a powwow drum that the first powwow drum I made, it's 20 diameter, 13, 14 deep. And I took it to one of the shows, the first ones. And I thought, oh, you know, somebody said, wow, that's really great and everything. But as I went to the show, it said, Dad, you're not. And I went, no, you're my drum. We're just going to go show. And it was like, good, because I wanted to make sure you ain't selling me. So I hear him. And also recently, you know, I want to go back west. I came out here to Ohio to take care of my mom a couple of years ago as she passed. But two of my drums, the one that's Rainbow Goddess, which is a Navajo Hopi one, she's one of my personal ones, and there's the Buddha drum. Um, Both of them have communicated through Kathy, and I felt it too, is that they're tired of being in Ohio. They want to go back to the mountains. They want to go back to the big trees, and they want to go back to those areas. And so they're kind of getting a little impatient with me about hurry up. They're so different. I mean, one of the fun things about a show is hold this one, hold this one, hold this one, hold this one, you know, and people just, it's night and day, or the messages that come across. Some people hold a drum and go, whoa, it just, I was just taken here, or you know, the stories go on and on. It's
Well, if I
wonderful.
really think about the integrity of each drum and the adventure that each one is on, not only to the holder, but through generations, because
Yes.
wouldn't it be fair to say that these drums are stewarded through quite a long, potentially quite a long period of time?
Yes, and that's part of the ceremony. Is the words I have in the ceremony is as long, you know, for all the keepers, the spirit guides of all the keepers of this drum, for as long as this drum is on the face of the earth. That's part of the ceremony, and that's, yes, it's an integral part of what I was asked to do. Yeah.
I'd love to direct people to your website or to you through Shamans Directory. They can have an access to your website there to learn all about the
Sure.
sacred trees that go into it. And what I'd really like to spend a few moments on, if you're willing, is the sacred symbology.
Please.
That's where I'm going, of your
Yeah.
and drums now. I think this is quite a beautiful expression of your work. I wonder if you
Yeah.
could tell us about it.
Yeah. This idea came to me, oh, 4 or 5, 6 months, maybe 6 months ago. And I realized the drums that I make, the multi-woods, you know, they're expensive. They'll be $600 to $1,000, you know, depending on what goes on the drums, because there's a lot of time. And I've never sold anything. I've never made things to sell. And I've always struggled with prices and what you charge people. You know, sometimes I just give them away because I know that person needs a drum and say, here, have this. You know, and they're blown away. I said, no, you need this drum, take it. I've given a number to practitioners, and I've seen their practice expand in ways they didn't expect. They'll have one of my drums sitting there, and whatever spirit animal is there, their whole space expands. And they've told me this. It's just amazing, Chuck. So I do that. But I realized going to powwows and talking to other people, I needed to figure out a drum that would have the same spirit connections, and these do. They're the same. I could give this. It doesn't matter. It'll still talk to people. And price point to get them in people's hands that need them and can readily do it, because that's important to me. So I figured out, I researched steam bending. I had to figure out some things, make some jigs, and break some wood, unfortunately.
That's the engineer in you.
Yeah.
You thought about it, and you could craft it.
Yeah, and so one of the important things, I met Don Eduardo this 6-7 months ago, Inca Paco. He hit it off, and it was an amazing meeting. But this was as I was fomenting this idea. So what I've done, I wanted to do is I take the sacred. I went through. He gave me pictures of his textiles that his family makes. For example, that's the Apu Mountains, and there's a condor there, and that's actually the Serpent Mound up here in Ohio, the big one. That's the serpent to me. I've done ceremony there. There's a jaguar. So I took those and I made images for them. And then like on the inside, there's some of the images that are my power animals, and I put some Lakota prayers and things like that in them. So I had to invest in some equipment. I got a laser engraver, and I figured out how to do that because I'd never done that before either. Put it on my CNC, which I'd never done before either. So I'm making drums now that have, this is the first one that I put a skin on this week. It's a goat. Beautiful sound. I love goat. And
how did you choose goat, Chuck? Is that unusual in the drum making realm?
I think somewhat. I think a lot of people traditionally go to deer and elk and bear and buffalo, things like that. But me, goats eat raspberries. And if there's any animal in the world can eat a raspberry bush down to the ground and be happy, that's a tough animal. What do you say? But I also have taken the attitude that, and I know some people get really fixated, whatever is in the drum represents spirits, everyone, all the time. This represents the buff, everything. It doesn't really matter to me. It's people have a personal preference, but I see it from the viewpoint of all of our relations are in these drums anyway.
It feels like it has a very lively, responsive sound.
It does. I've done goat before, and again, it's just low on the price point too, but it's easy to work with. It has beautiful sound, and it's a tough skin. So anyway, what I've done, I've started putting, what my designs are is to be able to give people the ability to give me their specific sacred symbols, and I can put it in their own specific drum. So it's their drum. They can have private symbols, Reiki symbols, whatever they want. And then around the outside, whichever they want to do. There's a friend of mine, Michael Williams, who's coming up to cover this show this weekend here in Springdale or Cincinnati, Victory Light. As Sandy said, don't go. I want you to rest. He's in Arizona. I met him at my first powwow. He's a Tlingit, Alaska tribal guy. Makes these beautiful bags and a lot of work. His wife is very spiritual. But Tracy told him last week, and she said, go to Cincinnati and cover the show for Chuck, But I've worked with him since the first powwow. And what I'm doing with him, I'm taking his art and I'm making his own individual style, his own line of drum frames. And this is what is available to other drum makers too, is it just me making a drum? If a drum maker wants to have their own signature sacred drums, that's what the purpose of this is to do also. I'll just send them the frames. I'll make them the frames, put what they want. That's their work. They can finish it out to do what they want. I can't do that with the multi-wood frames because there's such an intricate construction method to it. But these I can, and sitting at the table listening to my spirit folks, they're super happy. They're like, yes, these are going to be big because we can reach so many other people. Hurry up. I was here, hurry up.
What does Sandy say about the steam bent drums?
She loves them. I mean, all this is It's all part of her big plan book anyway, but it's kind of like she just sits back there, looks at her nails, and goes, "Dude, you're cooking," you know. And it's Michael took his first ones to a powwow down in Flagstaff a week and a half ago, I think. And the tribal response, the first time the tribal people, he showed it to him, he got some phenomenal honor-based reception, seeing his drums with his Pacific Northwest artwork that he creates for his tribe. And yeah, it's a big door because you can offer something like this at a really low price. It doesn't cost me, you know, it's time to put together and bending and everything, but still, you know, the time you put it on the laser and I still have to process the images and make it, but it's all part of the game, and I don't care. It's giving people a sacred tool that so many people can have that's so distinct and important. It's important from a sacred standpoint because I can guarantee you every one of these symbols has a whole bunch of spirit folks happy and they're there. And that to me is what my job is doing this.
What I love about all your drums is your hands-on approach, Chuck. And these steam bent drums in particular, you're making them available, and especially you're encouraging people to develop their own personal cosmology, their own spirit family, their own way of
Yes,
being that can be
absolutely.
shared with the world.
Absolutely. And if people want to put their own their own personal prayers inside, their symbols. There's an organization that Michael's going to go talk to, but they have a collection of, this is as far as I'm going to go, but they have a collection of affirmations from the elders, many tribes. He knows some of the people. And I'm really sure in our conversations, what we were talking about the other day, he'll end up going and talking to them and taking some of these and say, you know, we'd like your permission to work. And there's a lot of powerful feelings to that, because one thing I ran into the first powwow, being a white guy, in this lifetime, although spirits have told me, you know, this time you're not tribal, but what they said was, this time you're not of the blood, but you're of the heart. But there are many of the blood that are not of the heart. So don't worry about it. But I went to that first powwow. Here's Mr. White Guy. I got Wakan Drums. Everybody knows Wakan's sacred drums, right? I was a little bit fearful what was going to happen. But I had so many of the tribal people come up and see the drums, know what's going on, feel it. And I had so many people say, thank you for bringing these to the earth. So, but to take that next step to really better fully integrate into the tribal community is through Michael being an Alaska tribal guy, and what he sees, his ability to help take these objects as part of his red road and help other people, which is going to be very important.
I sense the import of what you're saying, giving back to the indigenous, the tribal people in the way that you found, and spreading out the symbology, the tall people, the masterful way you make your drums from the heart. I think that's quite obvious.
There's a lot in here.
We all see that. We all sense that. Is there anything you'd like to come to a close with?
I'd like to show you, and this came out of the first powwow. It's my story stick. The importance of this, and again, this was a time the first drums came out. It was at Stillaguamish Festival of the Rivers in Washington State. I met a guy on Saturday. He walked in my booth. His name was, I think it was Ralph, full regalia, and he had just retired. He was in his 50s. He had made thousands of drums, and he looked at my drums and he said, "I've never seen these, and thank you for bringing these to the earth. My father needs to talk to you. He'll be here tomorrow." Tomorrow, 11 o'clock, comes this 75-year-old guy come booking up to me, and he's got 2 bags, and he's a flute maker, a story stick maker. He said, "My son told me about you." Well, when Paul came up, there's 3 other elders that came with him. And so I'm surrounded by 3 elders and Paul in my little tent. And he's looking at the drums, and he's just a vivacious gentleman. He's been making these for 15 years, I guess, at that point, 15, 18. And he said, I have something. He picked one of the story sticks up that had a salmon head. And the Still River is just maybe 200 feet over from where we were. And he started playing a prayer. And I was rooted, just wonk, eyes closed, tears started coming out. And he played a prayer on that story stick. And when he finished, I opened my eyes. He said, that was a prayer from a salmon in the river just as she died. This is from the salmon people that is blessing the drums, blessing the intent, and blessing your work. I was so overwhelmed, and I still am when I tell the story of somebody like that on the second day saying and giving that sort of a blessing was just, so in the conversation, I said, I'd love to make you a drum, and trade. And he said, I don't sell any of these. I make them specifically for people. I will make you one. This was what he made for me. I made a drum for him. Took a long time. It even had madrona wood in it. But when he called me and said, this is done, because he creates these out in vision space, it takes him a month. And the story that's on this stick is my life story and Sandy's, it turns out. But when he said it's time to pick it up, I could see all of a sudden instantaneously there's this white light up in Arlington, and it was this saying, I'm ready, come get me. So this is as powerful as the drums. I've given this to people to hold, and I've watched people's knees buckle as the energy flows into them. I've given this to people. The eagle comes and just, it's a tour of the world, if you want to call it that. But it starts off with walrus bone, and then there's pipestone because he's a pipe carrier, and then there's the 4 colors of the wheel, and then there's dark walnut. That's me grounded to the earth. And then there's a ring of crushed abalone, and that's Sandy, her spirit. This is a burl, and that's the earth as your life comes up into your existence, crosses over malachite, which is the earth. This is poplar. This is yellow Alaska cedar, so it's all regional wood. And then that's the red road. That's rosewood. I think it's rosewood. And all the black lines in here, that's walnut that's decomposed to the point where it's black. And that's what he uses as paint. And then that's abalone. That's as you pass through your life, you're back in spirit, and you're coming through the wood. And this is both of us, abalone and turquoise, which is Father Sky, as we go back out, back into existence. In the eagle itself, that little streak, that's a piece of buffalo bone that he uses to hold that holly onto the ebony. So, and this wood, the Alaska cedar, is a group of cedar that was given to him 30 some years ago by a guy that taught him, I think, how to do this as part of his wood. And he had saved this piece, and this is what he used to make this story stick. This is kind of the essence, I think, of it coalesces all the gifts that on this path of the drums and this, to receive something like this from an elder at the first powwow who saw your drums. It just, and the prayer that was spoken, it just keeps growing in circles and circles and circles. And so, that's my story. That's how this all came about and what I do. It's an amazing trip because I think I said before, is just you give the first time you give somebody a drum, hold this, bam, they have a life-changing spiritual experience. And the warmth that you feel and the gratitude of being able to be that person to enable spirit to come in and make such a life changes. I've seen life changes in people just holding the drums, that they have just poof. And I can't ask for anything better to participate in the way that I am. It's been wonderful.
Thank you so much, Chuck. What an honor to spend this time with you. You're such an artisan coming from your heart, and you're able to translate your visions into real, tangible, sacred tools that are spread throughout the world and
It's my
shared.
buddies. They're, I'm every once in a while I get stuck and I think, what am I going to do? And there's just a whiteboard comes up and they say, do it this way. It's great.
It's shared both laterally and horizontally, vertically, through time. It's just such an incredible gift, and I'm so pleased that you found your pathway, that you're willing to offer it not only in a tangible way but an inspirational way also to us over the Shamans Directory Shaman to Shaman program.
And,
Any last words?
yeah, one thing I do want to emphasize, any drum, any sacred object anybody makes anywhere in the world is equally as sacred as anything. They're as sacred as anything. And I stress that because in no way what I make is sacred than anything else. It's, if somebody takes a lot, it's that simplistic of a truth that is pure. A sacred object with the intent of being a sacred object is a sacred object. It doesn't matter if it's a rock or a stick somebody just pulled off a tree. It's equal. The spirits are there. They will always be there. And that's part of everything. So yeah, that's kind of my last words. You know, I make nice drums, but everybody else does, and it doesn't matter. Spirits are part of it. They're part of it, and that's bottom line.
You're schooled in vulnerability, you're practiced in heart sharing, and we're so grateful that you're willing to share and that you're willing to offer. Please visit Chuck Wilson on shamansdirectory.com. His profile is right there, and all the accessibility to his work and creativity. I thank you so much, Chuck.
It's been an honor to present this, you know, this gift that I was given. You know, it came out of tragedy and everything, but then knowing what the spirits want to do and then being told, hurry up, figure it out, you know, it's pretty fun. It's amazing. So thank you very much and have a blessed day.